Good morning, fifth grade. We are going to get started on chapter 2 today. We're going to talk about the age of exploration. So, in last chapter, we talked about the Native American groups that were here on the land of the Americas before any European explorers came over. So, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to make this a little bit larger so we can see it. All right, so the age of exploration. We're going to talk about what happened when diverse cultures crossed paths. And these diverse cultures we're going to talk about are the Europeans and the Native Americans. And you would have just watched videos on that this past Friday, talking about the different cultures of those two different peoples, the Native Americans and the Europeans. So just a quick overview. We'll have 3 lessons in this chapter. Lesson 1 is the dawn of the age of exploration. Lesson 2 is the Spanish exploration and conquest. And then lesson 3 are the European powers in the Americas. The impact today is trade in the Western Hemisphere, and we'll read a little bit about that later on in the chapter. All right, so again, our essential question is what happened when diverse cultures crossed paths? In this chapter, you will read about how European exploration and the Americas changed the Americas forever. You will consider what the Europeans had to gain, as well as how exploration affected the lives and cultures of native peoples. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the timeline, and we're going to go across, and it's going to go on to the next page as well, so we'll continue there. Chronological thinking says look at the timeline, what was happening in other parts of the world while the Europeans were exploring the Americas. So we're starting with, these are all world events. So in 1300 or 1295, Marco Polo returns from China. In 1350, close to 1350, 1347, the plague called the Black Death begins, eventually killing approximately 1/3 of the European population. Then in the late 1300s, we have the Navajo arrive in what is now the southwestern United States. In 1425, we have Prince Henry of Portugal begins sponsoring explorations of the west coast of Africa. 1453, Ottoman Turks capture Constantinople. We have 1478, Spanish Inquisition begins. We have 1492, Christopher Columbus reaches the Americas. In 1488, let me move my picture out of the way here. In 1488, we have Portugal's Bartholomew Dias sails around Africa to the Indian Ocean. And then in 1497, we have John Cabot explores the eastern coast of Canada. I'm going to continue on the timeline at the bottom again. Okay. In 1498, we have Portugal's Vasco da Gama reaches India by sea. In 1513, Juan Ponce de Leon claims Florida for Spain. In 1519, Hernan Cortez invades the Aztec Empire. In 1522, the Spanish Magellan Elcano expedition completes voyage around the world. In 1532, Francisco Pizarro invades the Inca Empire. In 1543, we have Nicholas Copernicus argues that the Earth revolves around the sun, challenging most people's beliefs. And then in 1609, we have Henry Hudson set sail from the Netherlands to explore North America. And I know a lot of these don't make a lot of sense right now because we haven't talked about them, but it's kind of an overview of some of the things that we are going to read about within chapter 2. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the map here. I'm going to make it a little smaller so we can see it a little better. All right, so a lot of these explorers that we just talked about on the bottom, a lot of these explorers are here listed in our map key. So you can see that the explorers from Portugal are in green, the explorers from Spain are in yellow, France is purple, England is red. And then from Portugal, we have Diaz de Gama and Cabral. From Spain, we have Columbus and Magellan. From France, we have Cartier. From England, we have Cabot and Drake. And so you can look at each of these, whether it's a solid line, a dotted line, or whatever color it is, we can look and see where they traveled and what their exploration looked like. So by looking at this map, the first question I'm going to ask is, in which regions were the Spanish explorers mainly interested? So we'd have to look at the yellow, all right, and we'd follow the yellow. So we'd look at Columbus and Magellan's routes, and we'll see that they were mainly interested in, trying to get to the Americas, or actually they were trying to get to India, which is over here. All right. Sorry, right here. So you can see those different routes. It says, where else in the world were the European powers exploring? So you can see, they were exploring, trying to get around the southern tip of South America, up the coast of North America, around down towards Africa and into India. So all these explorers are just trying to go out and see what was out there. So continuing with the reading. Over the course of about 100 years, the major European powers of Spain, Portugal, France, England, and the Netherlands participated in a mad dash to explore and claim land in the Americas. Reports of gold and other resources that could enrich their nations tempted these Europeans to spend money and take risks to sponsor several voyages. Some were successful and others were not. While the voyages led to different places in the Americas, they all led to a similar result for the peoples who already lived there: tragic and sweeping change. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. This page here, we're reading an excerpt from the journal of Dominic Raimundo, who was 10 years old. So he was a cabin boy aboard the Buena Estrella. It says, what if you could have sailed with an explorer 400 years ago? This is what your days might have been like. August 5th, 1524. At last the winds are with us. I'm anxious to reach the New Spain and discover my fortune. Every day I rise at 3 a.m. to wake the crew. I sing the morning hymns, cook, and I lay out salted pork and ale for everyone. Afterward, I help the captain with the logbooks that record everything that is happening. And then I walk the ship, working wherever I'm needed. Yesterday, I helped stop up a small leak. I still smell the awful odor of tar on me. Perhaps tomorrow I can bathe with a bucket of seawater. August 15th. I missed my bed at home. I did not have enough money to buy a hammock before we left Spain, so I sleep against the sacks of grain or with the horses. But it really smells down below, and the rats bite. When the nights are clear, I sleep topside and stargaze. The clanging and the rigging, the ropes and the metal fixtures, and the whoosh of the waves are my lullaby. August 22nd. The sky has been darkening all day. The air is heavy. Captain Padilla ordered us to batten down the hatches, which is to cover up the entrances to go below deck, and secure all the lines. Even the dolphins have gone, I'm afraid. In the 1500s, Spain had claimed a huge area of land in North America, and the land was called New Spain. And so that's why he said, I can't wait to get to New Spain. August 26th. Dios mío, I'm alive. These last few days have been the worst of my life. I feared a giant sea monster was trying to devour us all. I couldn't tell if it was day or night. So dark was the sky. The ship bucked and pitched in the merciless waves. Twice we nearly capsized. Sadly, 3 sailors fell into the churning seas. Water was everywhere, including below deck. I helped pump the bilge, trying to ignore the horses' terrified cries. My arms still ache, but at least I'm alive. August 28th. We limp toward Havana for repairs. Captain Padilla says our expedition is delayed by at least 3 weeks. Food supplies are low and tempers are high. We couldn't collect rainwater during the storm, and now our barrels are filled with algae and scum. The remaining cheese is moldy, and sometimes it hurts to bite into what's left of the hardtack. Hard is the right word for those biscuits. I remind myself that gold and glory await me. September 8th. At last, dry land. Some sailors talk of staying in Cuba, finding work in the gold mines or in the sugarcane farms. But I'll continue. After that hurricane, I don't even fear the Indians. And this says, because Columbus thought he had reached the Indies in Asia, he called the people of the Caribbean Indians. Later explorers used the same name. So how we refer to the Indians as Native Americans because they were native to the Americas, that's the more technical term for it. But Columbus referred to them as Indians because he thought that he landed in India when he first came to the Americas. All right, so I want you to go ahead and answer and think about these questions here. So this is what motivated Dominic to travel to New Spain? How would you describe the journey from Spain to New Spain? And then I want you to think about Dominic's character. What characteristics does he show that are necessary for survival in the journey to the Americas? Okay, so in each chapter, we have biographies of different people that we should know. So I'm going to go ahead and read these different biographies to you. There's 2 on this page, there's 2 on the next page. So let's go ahead and get started on those. We have Montezuma II. At the time of the arrival of the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez, Moctezuma II controlled the Aztec Empire. Moctezuma, however, often demanded sacrifices from the tribes that were his subjects. Years of these demands had led to many people to dislike him. When Cortez kidnapped Moctezuma, Cortez assumed the Aztecs would not fight for the fear of endangering the ruler. The people were only too glad to be rid of Moctezuma. However, and the fight that followed resulted in Moctezuma's death. So he was a ruler who his people didn't like. When Cortez came and kidnapped him, he thought, hey, I'm going to take their leader and then they won't attack us. Well, they didn't care that the leader was gone, and then it ended up that Moctezuma ends up dying during the fight. All right, then we have Leif Erikson. So you can see a statue of Leif Erikson here. Many historians believe the Norse explorer Leif Erikson was the first European to visit North America. Several accounts exist of his journey to North America. In one, while returning to Greenland from Norway, Erikson was blown off course by a storm. In another, he heard of a land to the west from an Icelandic trader. Regardless, he returned to Greenland with tales of a place he called Vinland because of the many grapes growing there. Scholars believe this was what was now Canada. Later Norse expeditions also visited Vinland. These took place about 500 years before Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas. Okay, continuing on with our biographies, we have Queen Isabella I of Spain. Born a princess of Castile, Isabella united all of Spain when she married Ferdinand I of Aragon. Together they conquered Granada and increased the size of their empire. It was as she was encamped with her army at Granada that an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus approached her. He asked her for her support for an expedition to find a western route to Asia. She agreed to give him some money, seeing an opportunity to enrich her country. Then we have Atahualpa. After the death of his father, Inca Empire, Huayna Capac, Atahualpa waged a war with his half-brother for the Inca throne. Only a few months after his victory, however, Atahualpa's reign was cut short. Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro entered the Inca city of Cuzco in November of 1532. Pizarro invited Atahualpa to a feast. Using the example set by Hernan Cortez, Pizarro captured Atahualpa and killed his soldiers. The Inca Empire promised the Spaniards mountains of gold and silver in return for his release. Once the riches have been delivered, however, Pizarro killed Atahualpa anyway and ended the Inca Empire.